Hello, everyone. My name is Armando Perez-Carreno, and welcome to the Web Talk Show. Today with us is Omar Attia, founder and CEO of Zero Carb Life. How are you, Omar?
Doing well. How are you, Armando?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. A bit of getting out of a cold, so excuse my voice today, everyone. Omar, can you tell us a little bit about Zero Carb Life and how you got here?
Sure. Zero Carb Life is a company where our mission is to transform health through food. We believe that food can once again be a source of medicine for us and a source of well-being and improve our bodies. And that's what we're setting out to do. We believe the only way to really do that is to make healthy food and food that's good for you taste amazing and not and tempt you in a positive way, just like food that's not good for you. So that's our mission. And how I got here is I graduated Purdue University Chemical Engineer a while back and worked for some of the biggest food companies in the world, Kraft Foods, Procter& and Gamble, Conagra Foods, and learned a lot about both R&D, product development and operations through those experiences. And each time I would get promoted, it would be a harder opportunity, harder to go to entrepreneurial opportunity because it was making more money in corporate America, harder to leave. And so it was kind of a hard decision back in 2014 to start my own business, consulting business at the time, and start my entrepreneurial journey. And in 2020, 2019, 2020, there was enough solid business pipeline for the consulting company to where I really wanted to start my journey in startups and being focused on startups. And in 2020, all the consulting business shut down because of COVID. And so I was able to fully focus on the startup at the time, Zero Carb Life, which was based on me understanding some technology of someone who had brought this idea of that they had done at the kitchen top, and then me figuring out that with the things I had learned, that we could innovate and invent ways at scale to make it for customers and continue to develop from there. So that's kind of how Zero Carb Life started up.
That's amazing. And for anyone who has not heard of Zero Carb Life, when I heard the name, I thought, "Oh, okay, zero carb. Well, maybe it's like a drink or something. I don't know." And then I go and I see pizza. I would have never thought we would be discussing zero carb and pizza in the same sentence. So, how did this come about?
Yeah, and by the way, a lot of people, part of the wow factor that people have when they try our product is that when they hear zero carbon pizza, they're like, "There's no way this tastes good," and so they're kind of blown away with the fact that it tastes just like a thin crust, crispy pizza, even though the crust is fully protein. Basically, we start with white chicken breast, clean white chicken breast, and there's very simple ingredients in the crust. There's chicken breast, olive oil, salt, spices and we put that together without binders, without additives. That's kind of our moat. That's what we have patented. So we have one patent that's been issued, a few pending, and it's all around the fact that we have a very specific process of how we make that into a pizza crust that keeps its form, keeps its texture, is crispy to the bite, and you can put your favorite pizza toppings on it. For the crust, we do sell also frozen pizza that we make, and then restaurants will buy the crust from us and make their own pizza on the crust. So that those are kind of some of the channels of how we sell. We sell online, we sell to restaurants, and we sell to in retail. And then we have another product line, which is the chips, which we'll talk about in a little bit as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, we'll get into those for sure. I'm just looking at the melted cheese, and I know whoever's listening is not looking at this with me, but it looks so good. How can chicken turn into this? It looks just like bread. I mean, it's toasted on the side. Like you
Right.
see, it's just as if it was wood-fired pizza, right? That
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
looks perfect. Is How does that happen? Like I don't I know you can't tell me the secret
No, no,
recipe,
I can
but
tell you. I
what's
can tell
like
you
how
now.
does it work? Why does it work?
Sure. So we early on in my career, I actually my first patent was with Kraft Foods. And people who are in food or chemical engineers or microbiologists know that the way you get food to be safe, there's a couple ways. One is to use acid or preservative, which is an additive to food. Another way is to use time and temperature. So, for instance, when you say pasteurized milk is basically using heat for a certain amount of time, and then it's considered what's called pasteurized. It's called pasteurized just because it was named after the Pasteur,
That's
which
true.
was the man who invented it. But basically, That concept is what's applied in a lot of foods, that you kill the microorganisms at a certain heat level for a certain amount of time. With the earlier patent I had gotten at Kraft Foods, which by the way Kraft owns, I don't own. It was us accidentally discovering that mixing some of the milk fat ingredients actually for a longer time than we expected for a certain heat level allowed us to bring out some taste notes that would never show up in those ingredients without changing the nutritional value of those ingredients, without changing the original ingredients themselves, but bringing out some different notes because of the heat, which people who cook probably understand how that works, but because you can caramelize onions, for instance, etc. But in food processing, that wasn't the norm. Using time and temperature is usually for killing organisms, not for making it taste different or have different texture. So that same concept, when I understood from the friend of mine who had this kitchen top invention, who he loved, that he loved, and he believed the way to do it was sort of in a restaurant, not seeing that it could be possible at scale because he wasn't a food engineer. I realized that I could apply sort of those earlier learnings and we could do this at scale and invent more products with the same understanding. And so that's kind of how we came about to launching Zero Carb Life, is applying the same concept. And so it's using time and temperature. And so I can talk about it because it's in the patent, so people, it can't be necessarily copied exactly the same. We do have some trade secrets around how we make the chips, so that I wouldn't be able to say, but it's the same concept. It's time and temperature instead of additives to keep the form, get the texture, get the mouth feel. It's very intricate because if you go higher in thickness, it loses that texture. If you go lower in thickness, it starts to break. So it's a lot of research and development went into it, but that's what gives us the moat.
That makes perfect sense, actually. I like to grill a lot,
Okay.
and I went in a rabbit hole once because I was trying to figure out how to make the perfect steak, right? And I just do it by intuition, and you're doing things, and then but then I got into learning about specific temperatures and how the water can only boil at a certain temperature on top of
Yeah.
it, and
Yeah.
then the what
Yeah.
is it, the Maillard effect or something like that.
Yes.
It will only happen at certain temperatures, so you can't do it so hot because it doesn't really make a difference. And so I started
Right.
learning about a bunch of stuff like that and
Yeah.
how you would get completely different flavors and textures in the meat based on whether you gave it a lot of heat before and then less heat or gradual or at the end or whatever you do. And it's the same piece of meat, right? And
Yeah. It's the same
so
piece of meat.
it's
And so the
very
three
interesting.
factors, yeah, when it comes to steak, for instance, it's the thickness of the steak. So that'll obviously have a factor. And the only reason the thickness has an effect is because of the heat transfer across the
Mm.
steak, right? And so the duration, the temperature, how steady the temperature is or temperature changes, and of course the duration of each of those temperature stages, that'll all affect the steak you cook. So and then you can add water to the top of the steak. In some cases you can use just the water that's in it because every obviously animal based food has water in it, so all of that you can play with and get the perfect steak at some point. And it also depends on what you call the perfect steak, right? So some people want to have that meaty taste in it, some people want to have much more of the flavor that it's been flavored with. So it's all an art with science as the base.
Yes, with science, yeah. And I remember I interviewed someone many, many years ago that has a gelato place in Puerto Venturas near
Hmm.
near Cancun, and he was explaining the whole pasteurization process and how everything he did was natural with whole milk and actual fruit and everything. He showed me the whole process. It was very interesting, and it was very interesting to see from an outside point of view, like things that you don't really think about. They make sense after you hear it, but like to make ice cream, you need to heat it up, right? So it's like there's this
Oh yeah, yeah,
process that, like you said, it's time and temperature, which I'm impressed how you were able to get from the concept to actually make something based on chicken, right? Which I mean, I love chicken also, but man, it's just the pictures. I don't know, just a very good photographer, but it looks amazing.
yeah. We definitely work to make sure it looks like how it looks when it's cooked. But yeah, I mean the concept of our pizza is the highest protein pizza on the market. Our chips are the highest protein per 100 calories on the market, including all protein chips. And it's all because we are able to maintain the ingredients to have the most chicken and other proteins in the chips as the most of the ingredients without having all the additives. Because when you have, in order to bind protein, it's very difficult to bind it unless you add either something that basically tapioca or egg or something else. And even egg doesn't really bind that well, especially if you want it crispy. So normally most other companies, they'll do something that adds calories and carbs and sodium and a bunch of other things that in the end are not great for your body, at higher amounts, especially. And so, if you want to consume a lot of protein through those products, then you end up consuming a lot of sodium, a lot of, carbs that are simple carbs. For us, when we call our company Zero Carb Life, we don't necessarily say everybody should consume zero carbs. We believe you should consume a low, like the best diet is a low complex carb, high protein diet. That's what's best for everybody, especially if you want to maintain proper macros and have a strong body and healthy body. So you do want some carbs, especially in the form of vegetables and fruit and some other whole grains. So that's kind of what we recommend. So we would take that away so that you have all the opportunity to consume those carbs, so that pizza and chips are a lot less carbs that you're consuming.
This is great. I expect because of how chicken is probably harder or more expensive to get than just flour.
Yes, yes, very
That
much.
the whole supply chain part is interesting and the manufacturing part as well. Can you talk a little bit about how you got to be able to do this at scale?
Yeah. So initially, honestly, it was just finding the right partners. But we've been blessed because of the growth we had, that over the last couple of years, we actually, I myself invested to expand that contractor, and we became partners. And then we actually were able to make an acquisition of the facility, which allowed us to have total control of costs and of supply, which has been great for our business. And so that's why this year, as we're scaling, we've grown rapidly over the last quarter. We're now in Target stores, and actually, I just got a call today that the third Target order, is a little higher than even we expected, which is great news. But the point is that, with all that growth, now that if we hadn't had the supply chain transition to where we have more control, it could have been very difficult because we have to make in a very special facility. So normally in the U.S., FDA, and a lot of people in the U.S. don't know this, but the FDA governs any food product that is under 2% made from made from meats, other than seafood. So if it's, pork, chicken, beef, duck, whatever, if it's over 2%, it's governed by the USDA. If it's under 2%, it's governed by the FDA. Well, USDA facilities normally don't make pizza and chips. So you can't go and get quotes from 7 plants that are making pizza and chips and happen to be USDA certified, because you don't find those. We're one of the most unique products because we make something that's usually from under 2% meat with over 2% meat. So we're governed by USDA. So we really had to find a very innovative contractor initially, and then us taking control gives us a lot more flexibility because we have 8 to 9 product forms in our next patents, in addition to pizza and chips. We have taco shells, breadcrumbs, pasta, empanadas. So we have a bunch of other products that we can easily commercialize. We're not planning to because we're still saturating the market with pizza and chips and we're growing. But those are all possibilities for us or whoever, exits us. And so we want to make sure that the pipeline and commercialization is all very easily done. And we've been blessed that from a supply standpoint, other than the chicken, like you mentioned, which I'll get to second, but from a process standpoint, because of the innovation that we've done with how we develop those processes, they're not extremely complicated. There's equipment that of course, there's some modifications to equipment that we've had to make, but it hasn't been extremely capital intensive like sometimes it has to be for other products. So that's been good for us. And then from a chicken standpoint, it is insane because chicken prices change quarterly or even monthly. And then with what's going on right now, especially with gas prices where they are, when you have a raw supply, which you require, you can't just buy a ton and keep it stored forever, because number one, it's capital intensive, but number two, quality can be a problem. So you have to be with the market at some level, and that causes us to have to figure out how to hedge, because you can't just keep changing prices on the consumer, every 2 weeks, even though the price of your raw is changing quite a bit every week or sometimes every 3 days. So it is a challenge, and we have creative ways that we're trying to address it, but it's a constant challenge.
Wow. Did your taking control of the facility or this provider make sense early on? Was it something that you immediately saw as a potential, but then just waited until you were ready, or was it something that became apparent? And I'm asking from the point of view of someone that might be in a similar position
Yeah,
where it might be convenient for them to do something that maybe they haven't explored it.
right. I would say it's not at all the right thing to do when you're very early on. You need to make sure you have product market fit. You need to make sure that you are going to scale because if you take on such a liability too early, even if it's a different entity, which is the way we did it, like it's a different entity with a cost plus relationship, it's very you know above board visibility to both organizations. It just has common partners. But even if you do it that way, it could be very, very early to invest if you just started up your food manufacturing, or excuse me, your branded food company, because it's much better to do contract manufacturers supplying you, even though you pay a lot more. It's still better to do it that way because you're not taking on more risk than you have to. And it's because so many innovative food products and food companies don't make it. And the reason they don't make it isn't necessarily because they have a bad product, it's because the business is very, very tough business. If you're going to retail, there's a lot of promotional spend, there's a lot of getting on shelf costs. If you're going e-commerce, it's not easy to get word out there and to get trial. There's cost to that. And so you need to, I mean, the game is a very tough game to play in. And you need to know that you're at least winning at some level before you invest in having your own supply chain control. For us, it started being apparent, obviously early on for the reason I explained that, we're making very unique thing and you need such a USDA facility that does this type of product. It was kind of clear that, hey, if we had this ourselves, it would be great. But that's not a good reason to go and invest money in it because now you're putting yourself in a bigger hole. Once we had the volume and we had the traction and we had the product market fit that we've seen, that's when it made sense because we could foresee back in 23 early, excuse me, back in 24 and early 25, we could see that this is going to grow rapidly once we go into retail because we're going to have success in retail and then it'll just start blowing up in other retailers. And you don't want to be in a position where you say, well, I can't really fulfill that order because, this contract manufacturer has this on schedule 6 weeks from now instead of next week. You need to be able to fulfill orders as soon as they come and at the same time not overspend and have a ton of inventory. So the only way to do that is to have control of the supply chain.
Let's talk about retail a little bit. When people create a food product, so a lot of times it's a concept. Oh, where am I going to sell it? B2C sounds hard. I should just sell it as stores. That's where I see products, right? So, but it's not as easy as it might seem if you're just starting out, right? So, what can you say about the process of getting to retail if one is creating a new product? What things should one consider? What caveats are there? What are some of the main learnings that you got out of starting to be at retail, people being in retail?
Well, first of all, I would suggest to anyone starting out that if they can start out first getting traction in e-commerce, if their product, so our product was a big challenge in e-commerce because it's frozen, but it did well enough because of COVID that we kind of were able to sustain those hits. And the reason there's hits, to be very candid, is when you're shipping frozen, there's a ton more cost than if you're shipping an ambient product. You have to put dry ice, you have to have a cooler. You can only put so much in the cooler because if you go oversized, then you're paying at a significant exorbitant cost structure. So it's very costly to ship frozen. If someone is selling a new product that isn't frozen, I definitely recommend starting e-commerce because you get immediate feedback from customers. You can get to product market fit much more easily by iterating product and getting feedback and iterating product. And you're also getting revenue pretty quick, right? You're not waiting 90 days to get paid. Like with Target, the minimum we're waiting is 30 days to get paid on product that we've already funded and paid for and manufactured 45 days prior or 60 days prior. So the cycle with e-commerce is better, especially for an early on company that doesn't have that runway. And so I recommend e-commerce first. Then when is the right time to go to retail? Once you confirm that you have product market fit at some scale, then you go to retail. But you have to have the capital infrastructure, the money behind spending for promotion. Because once you put the product on the shelf, it doesn't just sell itself. You have to have demos in store, especially if it's a new product, especially if it's a new category. Like protein pizza is not really a known, it's not a category, right? Pizza is a category. So you have to get trial because people hear protein pizza, they think it's not going to taste good. So they have to taste it. So you get demos, you have to pay for advertising, you have to pay to give discounts. All those things are very capital intensive. So I would say if you're going to go to retail, even if you're going to independent retailers, because there's not a, obviously going to the big store like Target, Walmart, Sprouts, etc. It's a lot of spend, but you're also getting a lot more volume. If you're going to smaller stores, that could be a good way to test, but it's a lot slower because it's smaller volume and you still have a long payment cycle. I know there's a ton I'm saying right now, but it's because retail is a challenge. Be ready, but if you are ready, go to retail because it is definitely where you can win, right? So you're not just you're very few brands can win on just e-commerce because you need to sell a lot to get to an exit level of revenue. Some do, but that's not really where you win with foods. You have to go to retail eventually because a lot of people that's where they shop. Even when they shop online, they go to their app to get stuff from Kroger or from Target or from Walmart. So really, that's where you want to be, but don't go to it too early because I've seen too many. I'm in network with a lot of CPG founders and CEOs, and I can't tell you how many have gone out of business because they went to Walmart too early or went to Costco too early, and it was just it caused them too much. They couldn't do anything else because that's all they could focus on. And then as soon as it didn't win, they were basically out of business. They had overextended themselves. So you have to be very disciplined and you have to apply that thing where, Steve Jobs once said that the only, getting to greatness isn't about saying yes to a few right things. It's about saying no to almost everything. I don't know how he said it, and so you kind of have to say no to retail even when it presents itself if you know it's not the right time for you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because you touched on two items that I think are very valuable. One is, of course, be ready, but the other is the marketing part, the demos. Demos are huge. The supermarket has so many items, all flashing colors and different things. And then with market trends, they change more modern or whatever. Everyone's changing. And so you go and it's a cacophony of options. It's very hard to choose something just by looking at that. And the way people shop, typically they have a list in their hand. So you have to think of that as a shopper. And they're going through and they're like, oh, okay, I found it. Okay. And then so maybe they'll see your product if it's next to something else. They're not just like browsing aisles to see what they find. Right. And so it has to pop out. Yeah. So there's a lot of packaging and all that involved. So marketing in terms of packaging, which maybe we can discuss a little bit later. But also, if you don't do demos, you're going to lose out on a bunch of feedback, real-time feedback from customers and a lot of potential new customers. We had a guest on the show recently that's what they do. They're this company that gets professionals to do demos, right?
Hmm.
So we actually had two types of guests. We had one guest that does that. They did demos like at trade shows, things like that, and had people like experiencing products. And then we had another guest that was all about like in-store tastings, right? For wine, for beer, for other types of food products. And it's completely accurate, I think, what they had said. When you go into the store, if you see someone showing a product, especially if it's a product that's like in your case, not a category that exists,
Hmm.
but it looks tasty and they're offering it to you, you're like, yeah, why not? You try it, and it's the percentage of likelihood that you're gonna get it just goes through the roof, right? If it was tasty or to your liking. But I've bought things where I tasted. I'm like, yeah, this is good. And I had no intention of buying anything like that, but it was
Hmm.
good. And you have some sort of a rapport there with the person giving you some free food, and then you get it. And so, yeah, I think that's. But to your point, you have to consider all the spending, which especially at the retail level with the big players is going to be hard because where are you going to put your money? It's going to dilute how which stores, which states, which right. So what you mentioned about maybe some of the local stores. It's
Hmm.
also very interesting if there's smaller shops, smaller supermarkets, things like that near your area, and you can talk with the owners and maybe have some presence there, and you can go and like I think that way you can have that feedback cycle without directly jumping to the big players, right? Is that accurate at all, or?
Is accurate. Just as a founder or another CEO, if I'm giving you advice, just be aware that that's not the play for revenue growth. That's a play for test market, and that's still extremely valuable. Like I think you hit the nail on the head that you don't have to be in the game of going to retail and the big spend to get retail level feedback and test that, test how are people picking you up on the shelf. So it's very good to do exactly what you said, that if you can have if you can have a test in some markets where you actually can have either your team or someone that you contract for, a reasonable cost to go and check out how are people picking it up off the shelf, how's velocity, because that's one of the things that you can get from the big stores is velocity. We get velocity reports per week. Velocity is how fast people are getting it off the shelf. So Target will give us our velocity report every single week because everything is digitized. Everything is
Mhm.
automated for them. When people check out, the data all uploads. We get it weekly. We know exactly how much has on average has been sold per store. You can't really get that easily from independents. You can some because of now more better software systems and POS systems, point of sale systems, but it's not like the big guys where it all uploads and is analyzed and you're kind of know where you're at. So, but it is really good to test. You definitely want to get feedback. In addition to e-commerce, it's great to get feedback from independent retailers, etc. Just be ready to support that as well. Like you can't,
Mm.
a one or two man company, you can put it in two stores, three stores, four stores in your area, a lot time in your schedule to be checking on those. But you can't go to 40 stores unless you have, four more people that can go check on it or you're contracting someone. So everything has a cost. That's the interesting thing that once you're in this business, and especially, me, I've been now CEO of it for 5 years and was with Kraft and Procter & Gamble and didn't have to worry about all the things I worry about as CEO, but I've seen a lot of what goes on operations, R&D. So I have all that experience. There's a lot of nuance that is never realized by someone who's like, hey, I have a great idea. I want to start a company to sell this product. Then when they're in the middle of it, they're like, I did not know this is all the things I'd have to deal with.
Yes. Yes.
So, we've been blessed to have success and to be able to navigate these things. But people have to be ready. And
Well, that
I'm not deterring anyone. I
no,
think,
for sure, for sure. But it's a good advice, and it brings me to my next question, which is: do you think that it makes sense for someone who has the entrepreneurial bug and they weren't in that space before, regardless
Mhm.
of your space, just any space,
Sure, sure.
and they're planning to go into a space because they have an idea, right? So they might not have had the experience of working in a corporate environment in that particular industry. And from what I'm hearing, yeah, it's a good idea to get some experience beforehand, right? Because you get to know the players, you see how the game works, etc. Let's say someone's just didn't have that experience, but now has the idea in a set of place when they want to go and be an entrepreneur. What? How can they get access to that? Is there like, would you suggest maybe trying to network with people in the industry and try to get feedback from people who've done it before? What would you suggest in that sense?
Yeah, without a doubt, if someone, and I'll just reframe your question to make sure that I'm answering the right one. What you're saying is if someone has a great idea for something because they're a customer and they realize that, hey, I could do this better, and they've never really done work in that industry, is that a good idea for them to sort of make that leap to a different industry than what they've been used to and start something up? I would say it's not a bad idea. It's something that can be done. I would say don't think that you could just go into it and succeed because you have a great idea. Ideas are not the issue when it comes to business succeeding. I mean, I could point to 3 to 4 products that are selling like hotcakes in the food industry that are not even ideas. For instance, Liquid Death is an amazingly popular product and it's literally water. And now they're doing flavored drinks, but it's water, right? And it's all about the marketing, the positioning, how it got into the market, the channels. I guess what I'm saying is, yes, the person can make that leap, but if you're going to do it, you better have, like you said, a network around you. Ideally, you have someone that gets added to your team. Ideally, you don't have to pay for their time. They believe in the idea enough to say, and they're a good way to, that's a good way to validate, by the way, because people don't realize this, but when you're a founder, everybody that becomes part of the equation is someone you're pitching to, someone you're selling to. So when I'm hiring an employee, if I want top talent, I'm selling to them the vision of where we're headed and why they should be part of it. Even if they're going to get paid a paycheck, they still need to believe that this company isn't going to go out of business in 2 years. Their paycheck will grow, or they'll have bonuses that are higher than anywhere else they can go in 2 to 3 years because we're having, great results. So everyone you're selling to, a network, potential equity partner, a strategic advisor, all these people, if they believe in your idea, that's validation for it early on. And you need that support system in order to, if you're certainly, any founder needs that support system, but if you're going to leap to a different industry that you don't have experience in, you better buckle up and you better get a lot of people with you on that rough ride of that rough plane ride so that they can help you smooth it out.
Yeah, that's a very good point. There's a lot of fun and adventure in entrepreneurship, but it is a wild ride. And especially in certain industries, there's going to be so many surprises that it will just hit you in the
Yes.
face if you're not ready.
Yeah, and look, some industries are easier than others. If you have an idea for a software as a service and it's in a different industry, but you've done software as a service in something else, that's potentially doable. But to go into foods when all you know is like car insurance, that's that, I would not do that alone. It's almost like skydiving, right? I don't know if you've been skydiving. But I went skydiving once and it looks amazing. It's an amazing experience. Everybody knows how to just fall. So it seems like you could just do that, right? And then you just pull on two strings. But if you do that without someone who's experienced, you're going to just die. So, you know, you don't want to skydive without, an instructor behind you the first few times, and no one does that. That's the same thing with going into a startup, believing you can make it big and not having someone that's pulling the parachute and knows when to pull it.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I was talking many years ago with the founder of a very large consumer packaged goods company, and he had started out with frozen, like you were saying, a long time ago. But then he quickly realized the costs involved and pivoted to dry goods and just blew up, right? And when he told me that this was many years ago, it was like, wow, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. There's why go unless, like in your case, it has to be this way because that's the product and that's where you're heading, right? But if you have the option and the alternative, like you have two things that you might follow, but one of them you can definitely scale. You can do both. You like both. One you can definitely scale. The other one's gonna have a ton of complications, like frozen foods. Like which one do you follow? Well, try to pick the path of least resistance if they're both good.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Exactly. And that's when you have that opportunity to talk to people in the industry. Like if someone came to me and talked to me about a new frozen food, I would say, okay, tell me what's unique about it, or it's the value proposition you're offering that no one else is. Tell me how you're going to make it work with, if it's e-commerce, this is what you can expect, in terms of cost structure. So don't do it unless you'll be able to overcome it. And for us, we had incredible, we weren't pricing too highly, but we still had incredible product margins, which allowed us to be able to do frozen. I don't think that's as easy for others. Like if you're in a somewhat of a commoditized thing like ice cream, you might have an incredible ice cream, but if it's not very, very different, you're not going to be able to charge three times what people are going buying ice cream for example, unless it has a very, very unique value proposition. So now, how are you going to justify all that cost? And then, by the way, the cost isn't just in e-commerce. Distributors of frozen in retail charge a lot more markup than distributors of ambient because they have a ton more cost for the energy. There's fewer of them, and because there's fewer of them, even if their cost structure is not that much more, they charge more because there's fewer of them. So you just have to be ready for all of that. And that's just an example, frozen versus not frozen.
Mm,
In every industry, what is the unique challenge of what I'm thinking to do and how can I get knowledge of it? Yeah, you can use AI to find out a lot of stuff, but there's nuance that people who have been through it will be able to point out to you that you wouldn't be able to get necessarily from AI, at least not yet.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's great. We use AI a lot in our business and help clients with it and all that, but it's not an end all be all thing, right? So it can help you navigate heavy research. It can help you find things. It can help you find people, calculate things. It's really an amazing tool. But at the end of the day, it doesn't have all the experience that a person has, right? So it knows things that were public. Yes, and it can abs- make abstractions and predictions, and it's very good at that sort of thing. But you can never compare it to someone in your game, for example, that has, I don't know, maybe 70 years old and has done it for 40 of those years or 50 of
Right,
those years
right.
and knows all the ins and outs in a millisecond, can tell you what to do in certain situations. AI is not there. It's far from it, right? It's amazing, but that experience, personal life experience with things and things that have happened and situations and weird edge cases, that's where humans really shine. And we were talking about this the other day. I think there's going to be some sort of comeback of the older generation that's sort of sometimes left aside. It's like, no, 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 we really need you guys because there's a lot of knowledge there that can really help you. And to that point, what would you think? Because sometimes we might be afraid, right? So maybe I want to talk with someone that I know is very good in the industry, but they're experienced and they're successful, and I might not have the guts to go and talk to them, right?
Mm,
So,
mm.
what would happen if someone comes up to you and just asks you questions and genuinely is interested in knowing about your journey and how they can, like you as a founder or people you know as founders and successful founders, is it good for people to ask for advice and try to talk and or do you think they'll be cast aside?
No, I think almost every successful founder I've met, if they are a successful founder, they actually they cherish when people ask them for advice. It's almost like something that gets built in within us because we constantly say, "I wish someone would have told me X. I wish someone would have told me Y." So we cherish that someone is coming and doing that early on in their journey. And we also believe, at least most founders I've met, as well as I, believe that when you are genuinely connecting with people to just help without necessarily expecting anything back, you'll get a ton back in a lot of other ways. Not necessarily, you don't have to wait on it from that person, but what you give is you will get more than what you give if you're giving sincerely for the sake of the goodness of giving. And it's the same thing in terms of advice. It's the same thing in terms of guidance. And normally, it helps you crystallize further. Like as I'm having this conversation with you, I'm crystallizing further some things I would like my team to understand at a you know at an executable level. Things that are in my head anyway. So when you're giving that advice, it helps you crystallize thoughts that you can then share with your team and make everyone better.
That's an excellent point. So the first thing is, yeah, go and ask, right? They'll likely give you very good advice. The second thing, I heard this from Tony Robbins the other day as well. He was telling, it was Alex Hormozi, I think. They were chatting and he said about giving without expecting, right? And how
Hmm.
it sort of comes back in a way.
Yep.
Like you can
Yep.
see it however you want it, but it happens, right? So you give, you get back. And then the third thing, it is very true. When you teach someone or you guide someone in something, it's not wasting your time. It just, I've seen it. Someone comes along and we're explaining how this works, that works. It suddenly starts sparking things in your mind. You're like, yeah, that's right. I forgot we knew about this, but haven't implemented yet.
Yeah.
Or like, this is
Yep.
another way to think about the same thing. And even if you're the expert, just by talking with someone else and explaining it in simpler terms, it
Hmm.
brings back a lot of what you may have been thinking about the past few days and you sort of have it in your subconscious and it just comes forward to be used.
Yep, yep. And especially if they ask you questions, sometimes people who are new to the field or new to the concepts you're explaining ask a question that you haven't asked yourself or your team being in the trenches hasn't asked. And that actually then points out maybe a chink in the armor of what you're doing, or it points out something to where it actually opens up a new door of ideation or a new door of a challenge that you may not have perceived that is coming soon. So it actually helps in that way as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I did I understand properly that you're in the middle of a Reg CF race?
We are, yes, absolutely.
How
On
does
We
how does
Funded.
that work? We talked. Jason Fishman and I were talking about that on an episode, and I had no idea about it. I just learned about it, and then I started hearing about it more. So how does that work?
Sure. So you're talking about Reg CF in general, like
Yeah, yeah,
how that. So Reg CF was a regulation that was, I believe it was 2019 or 2018. It was recent. It's in the less than 10 years ago that the U.S. government Securities and Exchange Commission allowed that private companies can do a public raise as long as they meet certain stipulations, and so then you can. So then, as a on the heels of that, a few businesses were launched, like WeFunder, where you are able to share with this public everything about your company, and not, as long as they confirm that they're an accredited investor, which is the requirement by the SEC, they can buy shares in your company. And so and so that allows that a company like us, which isn't necessarily IPOing anytime soon because it doesn't make financial sense for us to do so, can actually sell some of our shares to the public. Most sort of optics that people have about why people go to the public is they think they can't raise on the private market, but we actually have been successful in every raise that we've done. We've oversubscribed every round we've had until now, and we have great network to continue to raise from. However, we believe at this moment in our journey, it's great to get much more public support and ownership in the company. And so we're doing it much more for the traction and the awareness raising, along with selling our product to sell our company and to have much more people invested in our company. So we believe it'll give us that effect. And at the same time, we can still go to the private market if they're interested, and a couple have been and have funded checks or have committed to it, but we are allowing opportunity for people in the public to also invest, no matter how small their investment is, so they feel like they can still be part of this success.
Hmm.
And we just believe in that in general. Like, look, we're having this success. Let's allow people that don't normally get to see these things and invest in them. It's a great opportunity. So Reg CF has opened that door for the general public, which wasn't open before.
I think it's great, especially with products like these. Like some people become real fans of the foods, of beverages, of different things, and they love it, share it with everyone. And so it's great that people who love a brand can say, "Well, I want to invest in this brand early on or later," and I don't know. It gives them a feeling of belonging in a way, and then also depending on how much they like, maybe they start just instead of just sharing it for the sake of it, it's like they feel like, yeah, of course you have to have this because it's like it's good for you, and like it's I don't know, it helps in many ways, and like you said, it will also give traction because they're sharing about it and and things like that. So
Yeah, a lot of the
that's great.
loyal customers are promoting our product anyway. So
Yes.
why not reward them for being loyal customers and for promoting our product by saying, "Hey," and when you promote our product, you're gonna make a little bit of value back
Hmm.
when we have our exit event, just like any other owner. So I think it's only fair, especially those loyal fans, that they
Hmm.
get a piece of the action, if you will, as
Yes.
they're helping grow our company.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's so many affiliates, right? Like so many companies have affiliates and so
Yeah.
many join and they actually do well with affiliate marketing, but that's just that. And it's if they exit or whatever, that's it. It's gone, right? But this way they're still a part of it. It's very interesting. What would you give as a piece of advice for someone who is thinking they're in the corporate world, they might have worked for some of the big players in a specific industry like you did, have experience, have seen some potential opportunities for betterment of something, and they're thinking they maybe they could go out and do something. What's the path that you think would be not necessarily a safe bet, because entrepreneurship is never a
Sure.
safe bet, but what would you recommend
Safer.
they
Yeah.
start with? Yeah.
Yeah. Like less risky bet. I would say number one, don't leave your job until the side hustle can clearly point to being a main hustle. So I'm a big advocate of doing things as a side hustle until you validate. Now, there's obviously things to be said about speed to market, and if you have something that needs speed to market to succeed, the side hustle game will obviously make it slower. But it's a tough decision, especially if you're leading a family or your income is supporting more than you, to go ahead and make that leap without validation. You should have validation before you make such a leap. At the same time, if you can take the risk and if you're pretty sure you can hop right back into the workforce or hop right back into some other way to make income, it's best if speed to market is a big deal on what you're working on to just make that leap. But don't do it until you have validation is the way I would normally. Like in the normal situation, don't make the leap until you have validation. And validation can be, you do this, you do it as a side hustle, maybe yourself or you with a couple other people doing it as a side hustle. And once you have sort of what's indication that there's product market fit, you plan to then commit to it and take a bigger risk. At the same time, I want to caution that a lot of people who have great ideas or what they believe is a great idea or what they believe is a great solution to a problem. So first of all, nothing is a great idea unless it solves a problem that people actually have that they want to solve. So if you think people have a problem and they don't realize it's a problem, great. That happens sometimes, but you need to go to those same people and validate, hey, if I could solve this problem for you, how much would you pay for it? And don't go on their word, create a proof of concept, and then see how many people will actually pay for it. That's how you validate. Once you have proof of concept validation, think, is there a way that I can go a little bit bigger without taking more risk and prove it at a bigger scale? And it's a little bit between proof of concept and product market fit. If you can still do that without taking more risk, that's what you should do. If you can't and you have to take more risk to do it, then take the additional risk, but only as much risk as you have to in order to validate more. So the ideal is that you continue to take more risk as you get more validation until it becomes really clear, look, this needs us to dedicate ourselves to it and go all in, and then you do it and you don't look back, don't hesitate. However, the norm is measure your risk, take proper risk, validate, and grow.
That's great advice. Risk is good, but don't gamble, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to gamble a little, but don't throw all your chips in the pot because you
Without
think you have the
validating.
best hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't know what the other hands look like, and you don't really understand. Sometimes you don't even understand the hands. You think it's a great
Yeah.
hand, but it turns out there's a nuance that makes it not a great hand.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Omar. This has been an excellent conversation. I learned a lot today about food and also manufacturing and other things along the way. So really thank you for coming on the show.
Appreciate you.
If
Appreciate
if
you.
people want to know a little bit more about Zero Carb Life and your different products, where should they go? Should they go to a website? Should they look on the stores, or
Yeah,
what's
so
the
if
best
if
way?
they live near a Target, especially, so we're in 556 Targets, so they can go to Target. But yeah, definitely go to zerocarblife.com, and life is spelled Lyfe, because it stands for love your food every day, love your family every day, love your, fitness every day. So it's a play on that as well. And so zerocarblife.com. And then also, of course, if they want to get a piece of the action, they can go to our WeFunder page, which they'll find, the link to it on there as well. And I'm sure you can share the link to it
Yeah,
for
I'll
them.
put those.
But yeah, but that's where you can get some of that action as well if you like what you see on our website.
Amazing. I'll put those in the show notes. And again, for everyone who's listening, at least the pictures look amazing. Next time we go to Target, I'm gonna grab one and see what this is like.
Appreciate it.
So if you have not liked or subscribed to the show, please do so. That way you can learn whenever we have a new episode with amazing people like Omar here.
Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone, and thanks Omar for coming on the show.
Thank you, Armando. It was a pleasure.
Pressure's mine. See you in the next one. Cheers.